Okay, hi everyone. Let's have a look at setting up to render an animation in Blender 2.8. And so what we're going to do is set up a camera move, something like this. Been working on the low poly island scene, and you'll find that the videos are all linked up on the classroom. So what we're going to do, we've got our static object, but we're animating the camera spinning around the scene. Okay, so let's move over to Blender. Now you need to obviously have created your low poly island and then watch the video on creating a camera that tracks on a path. So I've pre-set up a file that you can download. It's got no keyframes in it, so it's ready to go. So what you need to do is start to add the keyframes to your file and set up your file ready to render as well. So there's a few specifics to that. So let's have a look at our scene here. We've got a few things to note. We've got the camera, and the camera is quite elongated here. So I've got it set on like 147mm zoom at the moment. We've got this circle here. So the circle, the Bezier circle, is the camera is parented to that. So when I rotate the circle, you'll see that in whatever direction, you can see that the camera follows the circle. Okay, so that's one of our controls. We've also got here, we've got an empty. So the empty, you can see over here, it doesn't, this is it here, basic empty. It doesn't show up in the render, okay? So it's just an empty object. Again, the camera is parented to this object, actually, and then this object is parented to this, so to the Bezier circle, so that if we move that, the camera comes with it as well. And the other thing that you'll notice about the camera is it's got this, like, it points to where it's locked onto, so it's also parented to this empty over here, which is an empty sphere. And you'll notice that if I move the sphere, you can see that the camera tracks to that object as well. So that gives us our focus, and also we're going to use depth of field in our render, so it also sets the depth of field for us as well, where that's going to be. Okay, so let's have a basic look at how you can get this working. Well, we'll just do a simple turntable type animation for starters. So in order to do that, we want to have this Bezier curve or Bezier circle up here, rotate 360 degrees. Okay, so in order to do that, we're going to do pretty much the industry standard technique, which is keyframing. Okay, so you can pull up this window down here, and this is going to give you your timeline. We can zoom in on it to see it in a little bit more detail, and it's got a few features worth knowing about. You got your play heads here and your rewind and fast forward, but we've also got what frame that we're on, and you can scrub that by holding down your right mouse button and moving it along. So that takes us through the timeline, and we can see that changing up in this setting here. But I'm going to set it on 1, which will be our starting position, and we can set how long we want the animation for, and then the animation length will show up in this light grey panel here. So I've got it set at 150 frames just for starters. So at running at 25 frames per second, that means that this animation will last for around 6 seconds. Okay, so if I hit play at the moment, okay, the playhead will move through, but we can see up in this window here, nothing's really happening at the moment. So what am I going to do? I'll scrub it back to position 1, and I've got to add in a keyframe for this circle here. So I've clicked on the Bezier circle, so I've got it active, and everything's zeroed out at the moment, which is makes things nice and easy. And we can see here that what I want to do is rotate it. So I'm going to hover over my rotation data, and if you haven't got this folded out, you can just use your N key. So N brings that out, and T brings out your toolbar. Okay, so NT, good keys to know. And so I'm going to hover over rotation, I'm just going to hit I for insert a keyframe, okay? And we can see that this rotation panel is now lit up. So this is the only data we're changing, and these diamonds have appeared down in the bottom here. And there's another thing, a graph editor, which will change that these relate to as well. But we'll have a look at that just in a minute. Okay, so let's create a turntable animation. So we're going to have it rotate 360 degrees around our object over the course of 6 seconds. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move to frame 150, and we can see the playhead has moved right to the end of our grey data here, and I'm going to set it up here. So I'm going to change this to 360 degrees. That's cool. You don't actually see this change because it's, you know, at exactly the same point at the end as the start. And what I'm going to do is just go insert a keyframe. Okay, so now that we can see we've got these diamonds at the start here, and we've got these diamonds at the end. So if I hit play now, we can see that our camera is tracking around. Now, if I put in minus 360 degrees, I would track in the other direction. Okay, so our camera is running there now. I'll just hit all so you can see it a little bit tighter as to what it's up to. Okay, that is fine. So, and if I hit my 0 key, you'll see that we can see what the camera's seeing, which is it's spinning around the object. Okay, so I'll come out. Okay, that's good. We're running well at the moment. Okay, so another thing that's worth knowing about is we can see that this camera speeds up, reaches its full speed, and then when it comes to the end, it slows down as well. So if we go to the graph editor, which we have a look at here, the graph editor shows our animation over time, and it shows how it changes its coordinates. And we can see in this instance that when we zoom right in on this, okay, Blender's done the standard here where it's mapping the coordinates, and we can see it's a curve and it's like speeding up here. So you can see this curve is showing the acceleration of the object, or the acceleration of the rotation over time. You can actually change that if you want to, but we won't at the moment, but we can just extrapolate that to be linear, and then it would just maintain a constant speed all the way around, which is a good way to go for looping, but we'll keep it smooth in this case. So I'm going to go back to my timeline. Okay, so that's good, it's running around nicely. If we wanted to do some more complex motions, I could say I could run this back to, say, frame 1. Okay, that's good. And I might choose this driver, which controls the height of the camera and some relative location of the camera to this circle here. So I might go, you can see that when I select that object, it's got no keyframe data yet. I might go insert, I'll insert location data. There we go. And I might move it forward to approximately halfway. So I'll move it forward to, say, frame 75. And once it's at frame 75, it's over here. Whoops. I'll move it up a bit higher. That's good. I'll go insert data. That's good. And what I should do is just, and I might bring it back down below at the end or something like that. So I'll just move it forward. Whoops. I'll move this forward to frame 150. Yep. And I'll just visually sort of bring it down again. So nowhere in particular. That's cool. and I'll just go insert frame. Oops, insert. Okay, so now we can see if I rewind and I run this, you can see how the camera is moving up and down as it runs. So it's giving us a more complex sort of view of our object. Okay, so that's nice and simple, okay, but allows you to create some nice effects as you go along. You can also, as things are running, you can animate your camera zoom, so you can come across here and you might choose at the start to, so whoops, I've got it at 147. You can just, again, keyframe that, you just go eye above it, and then you can adjust that as the animation moves. Pretty simple stuff, I think. Okay, other things to know is that when you're ready to render this out, generally these days we're going to be using the Eevee render engine, and we can see that the samples are higher than the viewport. So this means it's going to do some more quality as it's going along. I've got ambient occlusion turned on, which is going to give us better lighting effects. We've got bloom turned on, which is going to give us a bit of flaring from the light. We've got depth of field turned on for our camera. And we've got screen space reflection set on as well. And that's about all that we need at the moment. So that's got our renderer set up, but we also need to set up our scene itself, so which is our next tab down. We've got it set up at 1080, which is, you know, reasonably high-res video. We've got it set to render at 100%, and aspect ratio, just leave all that at 1. You don't need to mess with that too much. Frame rate 24 frames per second. Okay, that's fine for what we're doing. And down here though, it's really important to set where your output is going to be. So click on the folder. So I'm going to set it to my desktop. Okay, I'm going to accept. You can give it a name here if you want to. If you don't put in a name, it'll just kind of generate some kind of number, but it should be easy enough to find anyway. And choose what you want to output. Okay, so you can output AVI JPEG is a pretty good standard one. If you're uploading to YouTube, you don't want too big a video. Pretty standard, that's cool. If you're rendering out something really big, you can render individual frames, and then you can see you've got plenty of options there of compressed or uncompressed. And you render out each individual frame, and then you stitch them all together at the end. So that can be a good way to go as well. If you're doing something that's really complex, and the renderer, say, crashed on frame 99 of 100, okay, you'd still have 1 to 98, and you'd only have to render out that last one and add it together to the stack, and you're ready to go. So otherwise, if you're rendering, say, one of these, and it crashes on frame 99 out of 100, you lose the whole video. So, but, you know, I know this is going to render okay. So in most cases for small videos, this is fine. Okay, so it's all ready to go. We don't need to mess about with anything else. All you've got to do is basically come up to the render tab and just go render animation. And then it will render your animation and it will save it to the desktop, okay? Or wherever you've got it set. But it might take it a while to render. I know the render I did took about 30 minutes, okay, to render to 1080 quality with sort of 64 samples. So see how you go, all right? So don't forget, you can extend this out. I had it set at 150 to keep things simple, but you might like to go longer. It's totally up to you. So that's about all we've got for now. Thank you.